Iliad by Homer, and this is a photograph which have been taken from the internet. And first of all, I ask your concern that the information and the pictures which I have used here, all these are collected from internet and for your better understanding. Now the topics which we are going to be discussed now. First of all, we will discuss what is epic, and then Iliad as an epic. After that, we will go on discussing about Homer, and then background of the epic, the Iliad. After that, we will focus on some characters, key characters, and then brief view about the whole story of Iliad, and then the summary of book 1, which is our main focus, and then some question and answers of that topic. So let's go to the point without further delay. First of all, what is epic? Epic is a long narrative poem on a grand scale, and it talks about the deeds of warriors or heroes, incorporating myth, legend, folklore, and history. This is the definition by Penguin. And now, next one. A long poem, typically one derived from ancient oral tradition, and narrating the deeds and adventures of heroic or legendary figures, or the past history of a nation. It is from Oxford. So, in conclusion note, we can say that epic is of a grand style, and it is a narrative poem talking about the activities or the working of warriors or heroes. Okay, and so far as its ways of spreading its concern, it mostly come in oral tradition, and then it is incorporating with myth, legend, and folklore, and apart from its history, etc. And then we will discuss about what are the types of epic. Epic are of two types, that's primary and secondary. Primary is known as oral or primitive epic, and only in much later, in some cases, it is written down. Okay, and the secondary, it is called literary epic, is written down at the start. So this is the two different. Primary epic spreads in oral tradition, but somehow at the end or latest time it was written. But secondary epic starts with in the written form. Okay, now next, talking about the history of epic. Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian epic, which is century 3000 BC, is the earliest example of epic recounting. It talks about the adventures of King of Gilgamesh and his search for glory and eternal life has been incorporated and discussed in that epic. Now next, Iliad and Odyssey, that is 800 BC, and that both recount the story of Trojan War between Greeks and Troy, with the adventures of where Odyssey deals with of Odysseus during the return from the Trojan War to his island to home in Ithaca. And so far as the epic Iliad is about the Trojan War and that of adventures like that of with Achilles and other heroes like that of Ajax and then his friend Patroclus, all will be discussed later in that piece. And so far as our epic is concerned, Mahabharata and Ramayana are of worth noting, and so far as the longest epic has been concerned in ancient India, these are the two most important ones. Now let's talk about the characteristics of epic. First of all, it is a long narrative about serious or worthy traditional subject. And the second, epic is a long narrative about a serious or worthy traditional subject. Okay, and most of the time these are of worth-noting subject, and then the narrative are focused on the exploits of a hero, or you can say demigod, who represents the cultural values of a race, nation, or religious group. Now, the action takes place in a vast setting, okay, and it covers a wide geographic area. The setting is frequently sometime in the remote past actually. Okay, and the next point that is in talking, and that's gods or supernatural beings frequently take part in the action and to depict that outcome. So that's why epic has some kind of divine power with godly features. Okay, the poem begins with the invocation of a muse, okay, and that is to inspire the poet. A prayer is a kind of to an appropriate supernatural being, and here the speaker asks that this being provide him the suitable emotion, and that's the power of its creativity, or words to finish his poem. Now, the eighth point, the narrative starts in medias res. What is medias res actually? And medias res is kind of a particular period, particular point, which starts, okay, and it will discuss later. Now, we'll talk about Iliad as an epic. First of all, the Iliad is an epic, okay, is a primary epic actually, and it begins in medias res. Okay, in medias res, okay, it is a kind of Latin term, which means it begins in the middle of things, and then has flashbacks to explain action leading up to the point. The Iliad also begins with an invocation to God or gods. Actually, in Iliad, the poet, who in those days or in other epics, who have been reciting the epic to an audience, say that maybe at a banquet, they begin by calling for a blessing for a god or maybe gods to attain this epoch of it. Now, the next. In a primary epic, the theme is usually stated at the beginning of the epic, and the theme of central interest of the Iliad is that of the wrath of Achilles, which is stated at the beginning of the poem, which we will be starting while discussing of the first book of Iliad. In a primary epic, gods intervenes in the affairs of human beings. Okay, and these also are found in the stories. Okay, next, there are long and formal speeches by many characters in the epic. So this is also the key features of an epic. The setting is of the epic is very vast, and it is also very vast. The setting of the Iliad is also vast, encompassing both the Greek and Trojan islands. Next, the Iliad is a poem over 15,500 lines. That's a really long poem, written in dactylic hexameter and the traditional poetic meter. It is. Next, epics use the epic simile. An epic simile is a long comparison of two things that are in different classes. Now let's talk about the poet Homer. It is little can be said about Homer. He may have come from the island of Chios on the western coast of Asia Minor. Traditionally, it is said that Homer was blind, but this evidence is based on the portrayal in Odyssey of a blind minstrel who sings a poem about the fall of Troy. Then the early Greeks insisted that there was a single individual named Homer to whom they ascribed the Iliad and the Odyssey. The several minor works called the Homeric hymns written by him. It is a consent, it is a matter of insistence by the Greek people. Now let's talk about the background of the Iliad. The events in the Iliad refer to the Trojan War, a semi-mythical conflict that was supposedly waged sometime between 1300 and 1100 BC. The Iliad is an epic that tells about only a few weeks during the Trojan War. The Iliad does not tell the entire story of the war, which is supposed to have lasted for 10 years. Now, other key features like that of the background, it controls that the wedding of Pelops and Thetis. The wedding was a splendid affair, and it was attended by all the gods and goddesses except one, and the name of that goddess was Eris. She is called the goddess of discord. She was not invited because of her tendency to cause problems among the gods. Eris was, of course, offended by the sight and created a sure way to cause as much strife as possible. She took a golden apple and inscribed the words "for the fairest" upon it and threw it among the party guests. There were 3 goddesses, each of whom believed that the apple was belonged to them, and their name was Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite. So this begins a matter of concord. Next, the judgment of Paris, and then the judgment of Paris would be given. The goddesses took their dispute to Zeus, who wisely refused to judge the matter, and actually he knew it would only cause trouble for him. Zeus decided that the handmost and the handsomest man on earth should decide the contest. And the handsomest man on earth turned out to be none other than Paris, who was now about 20 years of age. So all 3 goddesses went to Troy and asked Paris to decide which one of them was the most beautiful and should be awarded the golden apple. Each goddess secretly promised a gift to Paris if she should pick her. Athena offered to make sure he was always victorious in battle. Hera promised to make him ruler of the world, and Aphrodite, who is the most cleverest, promised to give him the most beautiful woman actually in the world. Paris naturally awarded the apple to Aphrodite because a young man wants what is, and that's the woman. There was just one catch. The most beautiful woman in the world happened to be Helen in Sparta, and she was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. So it's a matter of confusion. Next, the abdication of Helen. Paris decided to take a trip to Sparta. Paris was accepted into the house of Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Because of the laws of guest friendship, Paris was invited to stay as long as he wished. Soon after Paris's arrival, Menelaus had to journey to Crete for his grandfather's funeral. He left his wife and household, instructing them to make sure Paris was treated well. Aphrodite took the opportunity to send arrows to shoot Helen with his arrow, and Helen fall in love with Paris. Paris absconded with Helen and quite a bit of Menelaus' treasure too, and went home to Troy while Menelaus was still away. When Menelaus found his wife and wealth gone, he was quite angry. Together Menelaus and his brother Agamemnon called on all the other Greek kings to join an expedition to Troy to bring Helen back to Sparta. Troy was the wealthiest city in the world, so all the Greek warriors would be sure to bring back a great deal of loot too. Now we will discuss very briefly about the whole story of Iliad. Ninth year have already passed, and there was two cities, that mean the Achaeans and Troyes. They are going to battle in it, okay, and that battle was going on. At that particular time, Achaeans, before moving into the Troy city for the attack, they sacked a nearby city, taking several beautiful women as captive along with a lot of treasure. And among them there was a girl named Chrysis. She was also captivated. So the Chrysis, her father, a priest of Apollo, now went to the Achaeans and especially to Agamemnon and requested him to return back his daughter with some ransom also. But Agamemnon defies, and Agamemnon denies to bring back his daughter to him. Then Chrysis became very much saddened, and he prayed for Apollo. Apollo, God, okay, and as a result, Apollo shoot his arrows to the all Achaeans, and as a result of it, all Achaeans are now suffering in the disease of plague. At that critical moment, their prophet Calchas appears, and he said to Achilles that he will be in great danger if he discloses what should be done and what should need to do in that moment. Then Achilles confirmed that he should speak, he will defend him, and what should be done will be performed if any man have to do it. Then it is a term that Agamemnon should return Chrysis, that means the daughter of Chrysis, to Chrysis, the priest of Apollo. At that time, Agamemnon was very much furiated because he did not want to to give back the girl which was his only gift. So he demanded that he should be rewarded at the same time by giving the captivated girl of others like that of Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax. But Achilles defended, and at the time Agamemnon forced Achilles that the girl who has been captivated by Achilles, that name of that girl is Briseis, should be given to him. At the time, Achilles was very much angry, and he was quarreling with Agamemnon, and at the end he called for Thetis. Thetis was the mother of Achilles, and Thetis would be given the suggestion that she should go to Zeus and ask for his glory back, that means Achilles' glory back. So that's why at that particular moment there was a feudal, and Thetis requested Achilles that you should not go to the war and you still remain in your house. And at the time there was war between Troy and Greek, and in that war Menelaus and Paris was directly conflicting with each other, and Paris's brother named Hector, who was now in a mood of destroying all the Achaeans. He killed mercilessly all the Achaeans. So it's a matter of kind of lost of glory for the Greeks. At that particular moment, Patroclus, a friend of Achilles, wanted to prevent that war. Patroclus is a very good warrior, and at the same time he was a friend of Achilles. So Achilles agreed that Patroclus would go, but he requested his friend that please don't go farther to the Troys. But Patroclus in that war defending the Greek went to the cities of Troy, and as a result he was killed by Patroclus very mercilessly. So it's like a great disaster to Achilles. Achilles now could not keep away in the battle, so he tied a bond with Agamemnon, and then he went to Troy and attacked Hector, and he killed very mercilessly Hector and dragged him for 9 days to the place they were staying. And at the end, Priam, the father of Hector and Paris, came to Achilles and pleaded that he should give back his son, and Achilles was still denying. He is not in a mood to retarding the guy. But at that moment, Priam talked about his father Peleus, and the memory of his father aroused a deep pity, and returned Hector's body to Priam, and the book ends with that particular point, with the burying of or the trial of Hector, and there was a temporary truce, and Hector receives a hero's funeral, and that's how the epic Iliad ends. Now let's talk about the characters of the book Iliad, or book 1 especially. The first character is Achilles. Okay, Achilles is the protagonist of the Iliad, and the story centers on his rage and anger against Agamemnon. Now the next character is Agamemnon. He was the king of Mycene and brother of Menelaus. Then Paris, he was a Trojan prince and son of Priam and brother of Hector, and he was that man who abducted Helen. Now the next character, Hector, the eldest prince of Troy, and heir to the throne also. Next, Thetis, Achilles' mother, who is a synonym. And to your concern, that all the characters are in the epic. Most of them are working as soldiers. They are of human only. The character who is godly with divine power is Thetis. Now next character is Zeus, the king of the gods, and Zeus's power greatly exceeds his fellow immortals. Next character is Hera. Hera is Zeus's wife and the queen of the gods. Next character, Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Athena is a strong supporter of the Achaeans, and having also been rejected by Paris along with the Hera, she frequently lends courage and support to Achaean heroes such as Achilles and Diomedes and Odysseus. At the particular moment when Agamemnon and Achilles were quarreling, that particular time Athena came to the earth and pacified them. Next character is Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Aphrodite was chosen by Paris and over Hera and Athena, so that's why she was in the supporting party of that Trojans or the Troy city. Now Chryses. Chryses was a priest of Apollo from the city allied with Troy. Okay, he asked that Agamemnon should return his daughter Chryses after she is taken captive by the Greeks. Apollo, the golden archer god, prophecy and music. Apollo sends plague to the city. Now, the summary of Book 1. The story opens in the ninth year of war between Troy and the Achaeans, when a plague had swept over the Achaean army. Homer begins by asking, that should be talked about earlier, the muse to help him sing the story of Rage of Achilles. A priest of Apollo named Chryses comes to Achaeans to ransom back his daughter, whom the Achaeans had captured and gave to the Achaean chief Agamemnon as a gift of war. All the Achaeans advise Agamemnon to give up the girl, but Agamemnon fatally refuses and abuses the priest by threatening him not to see him near to his ship again. Chryses departs, but prays to Apollo to send down arrows of plague onto the Achaeans. Apollo hears his prayer, and the Achaeans begin to die from disease. 10 days later, Achilles calls a meeting of the troops. The seer cultures, saying that he can explain Apollo's wrath, but only if Achilles promises to protect him after he explains. Achilles agrees readily, and Calchas tells them that Chryses' daughter must be returned and that a sacrifice must be made to Apollo. Agamemnon protests, saying he prefers the girl to his wife, but gives in for the good of all. However, he insists that he must be repaid for his loss, or else he will be dishonored. Agamemnon refuses, saying that he will take the prize of any captain he pleases, including Achilles. Achilles is outraged and criticizes Agamemnon's leadership and threatens to sail home. Agamemnon tells him that he doesn't care if Achilles lives, and that he will take Achilles' own spoil of war, the girl Briseis, by force. Achilles is seized by rage and thinks of killing Agamemnon on the spot. But the goddess Athena appears at his side and takes his anger, promising him a reward for his restraint. Instead, Achilles insults Agamemnon and declares that he will no longer fight for him. The elder captain, Nestor, tries to mediate the dispute, asking Agamemnon and Achilles to back down, but neither listens to him. Achilles storms up to his camp, and Agamemnon organizes the sacrifice to Apollo. Agamemnon calls 2 heralds and tells them to go to Achilles' camp and take away Briseis. When they arrive, Achilles welcomes them and lets the heralds take Briseis away without a fight. He criticizes Agamemnon again and tells the heralds that the day will come when they will need his help. The heralds escort Briseis back to Agamemnon's camp. Weeping Achilles prays to his mother Thetis, a sea goddess, to help him to get revenge on Agamemnon. He says that because he knows his life will be sought, he should at least have his honor. Thetis appears at his side. Sensing his grief, Achilles explains the situation and asks his mother to plead with Zeus to take action. He notes that Zeus owes Thetis a favor, as Thetis once helped him escape a revolt of the other gods. She agrees to go see Zeus when he returns to Olympus in 12 days, and instructs Achilles to keep clear of the fighting. Meanwhile, the captain Odysseus sails to the island of Chryses, returns the priest's daughter, and prepared a sacrifice for Apollo. After 12 days, Zeus returns to Olympus. Thetis goes to see him and kneels before him, asking him to honor her son by granting the Trojans victory while Achilles remains out of the battle. Zeus is enraged angered and says that helping the Trojans would force him into a fight with his wife Hera, who supports the Achaeans. However, he agrees and bows his head as a sign of promise. Hera had seen everything. She taunts Zeus for trying to make secret plans and tells him that she has seen him making a promise to Thetis. Zeus tells her not to meddle in his plans and that there is nothing she can do to stop him from doing as he pleases. Hera is silenced by his fierce words. Then Hephaestus stands in front of all of gods, attempting to diffuse the quarrel between his parents, Zeus and Hera. He tells Hera that Zeus is far too strong and gives a comic speech about his own fall from Olympus. The last time he tried to defend Hera, Zeus threw him off Olympus. Badly injured mortals nursed him back to health. The gods laugh and feast. Book 1 ends as the night falls. Zeus sleeps beside his wife Hera. Now let's talk about some question answer. How many books are in total in the full epic of Iliad? And the answer is there are 24 books in total. The next question. Name the prophet who suggested that Achaeans could get rid of plague if they return back Chryses to his father. And the answer is Calchas. The next question. What were the ransoms brought by Chryses to Agamemnon? And the answer is a golden staff and the scarf sacred to archer god Apollo. Fourth question. Name the captive girl whom Achaeans give as a token of gift to Achilles. And the name of the girl is Briseis. Which goddess came down to pacify the wrath of Achilles? And the answer is goddess Athena. Who saved Zeus to escape a revolt of the other gods? And the answer is Thetis. Name the god who stood up to attempting to diffuse the quarrel between Zeus and Hera. And the answer is Hephaestus. Which gods and goddesses supported the Achaeans in the Trojan War? And the name is Athena, Hera, and Poseidon. Which gods and goddesses supported the Trojans in the war? Apollo, Aphrodite, and Ares. Next, in Iliad, who is well aware of his short life? And the answer is Achilles. So that's all. Thank you and have a good day too.